Currently across the world, it's estimated that less than 1% of victims are identified. And in fact, US State Department, from data they get from governments, identified that only 1 in every 8,800 victims sees justice. Currently, there is estimated to be about 50 million victims of human trafficking and modern slavery across the world, and the money they generate for criminals is well in excess of 150 billion US dollars a year. And of course, for governments, this is a serious issue. Only last month, the UN General Assembly in New York discussed the issue of the Sustainable Development Goals, and all countries reinforced their commitment to them. And one of those is actually to end and to deal with human trafficking and modern slavery and child labour and forced labour. And you may say, well, that's something about the UN. But what the UN Secretary General made very clear at that meeting was that this can only be achieved if it's done by local communities in their communities. And it's not just about the global south, and it's not just about developing nations, it's about the entire world. So there is a priority to respond to human trafficking at the international level, at the national level, but also, most importantly, because this is about human suffering. So we need to think about how much good we can do by coming together to end this crime, but importantly to make sure those people who are affected the most, the victims, actually have a pathway to support and to dignity and to become survivors and parts of community.
Welcome to Hogan Lovells. Tonight we have members of different sectors of society. We have members from the diplomatic forces. We have people from different religions. We have NGOs. We have lawyers. We have professionals. We have members of our community, all united by one cause.
We're losing the battle against human trafficking. The situation is getting worse, not better. And that, I think, is and should remain our starting point. Our aim, I'm sure, together, is to work for the elimination of human trafficking. So we face an enormous challenge. And everybody has a part to play in this because it is a multifaceted battle. The single purpose of Santa Marta, which is to act as a catalyst to effect partnerships in this battle against human trafficking. And I hope it proves to be a moment in which we can fashion and put into effect new and effective partnerships.
The harsh reality we face today is that human trafficking is on the rise globally, including within the borders of Europe. Factors such as armed conflicts, forced displacements, natural disasters, and socioeconomic disparities contribute to this alarming increase. Human trafficking is an insidious violation of human rights, showing no respect for borders or boundaries. It is a menace that transcends national limits, necessitating international collaboration and a unified approach to eliminate it. In the fight against human trafficking, diplomacy and diplomatic missions have a multifaceted role. They operate from a strategic perspective, negotiating agreements and ensuring representation in international organizations. They also play an operational role, raising awareness within diaspora communities, assisting victims, and collaborating with local authorities to bring perpetrators to justice.
We need to manage our way through the politics to protect the victims and to make sure that we do the right thing. And that collaborative work across jurisdictions, across different sectors is just so crucial to deal with the threats and the vulnerabilities in every community in every part of the world. The days of patrolling public space, the Bobby on the beat in British mythology, yes, that's important, but you cannot protect your communities, our citizens, simply from patrolling public space. We need to have international relationships. We need to have capability in the private space. We need to have capability in the virtual space. And we need to have an enforcement capability and a preventative and an educational capability. I think we need to be a separate discussion on the evils and the malice that sits behind human trafficking and human slavery. And then there's a wider, perfectly legitimate debate to be had about migration and immigration But conflating the two, we strongly felt was meaning that the victims are not being given the priority that they deserve.
It would always be the attempt of the Santa Marta Group, wherever we draw people together, wherever we try and act as a catalyst, to say, please keep the victims at the heart of your work. It's a telephone call for many of the religious women to pick up the phone here and speak to their fellow sisters of the same religious order or an associated religious order in most of the countries of the world. And then that is a kind of an immediate point of contact, of empathy, and often of effective action. There is an ally in this work to be found within the networks of the Catholic Church. And I have to say, especially with the religious women, the women are just fantastic. Communities of faith have levels of contact and levels of trust and levels of knowledge which are invaluable in some of these situations.
First of all, I think we need to know how we can translate all the framework, the SDGs that were mentioned by Kevin and others, the EU Convention on Human Trafficking, the Palermo Protocol. How do we actually translate those in action on the ground? And the second question that follows basically is, what's the role of diplomacy in this? Human trafficking, it's more and more a cross-border crime. I think the diplomacy plays more than one role in this area. We act as a bridge between the diaspora community, of course, a faith-based organization as well, and the local authorities in these countries.
There's a real cross-border dimension to this. In the European Union, for example, it's less than 60% of the victims that are identified are European Union nationals. The rest come from outside of the EU. So growth of the internet, and I think that's something that is increasingly something that law enforcement needs to address. That it is possible to change the culture, to change the attitudes of society.
Some people who are coming in, they may not even know that they are a potential victim themselves. They may be hopeful that they're coming for a better life. They may have been told a story that they're going to come for a job. Maybe they're in denial about the situation. So often it's not really clear what exactly is the case, and also the exploitation may not have yet taken place.
It is very important for us to have direct contact with our communities and representatives of our communities. So we are really cooperating very closely with the Polish Catholic Mission in England and Wales. These are our actually first partners. There are even weeks that I spend more evenings with the rector of the Polish Catholic Mission than with my wife, because there are so many community events going on almost every day. Also, we play a very important role in this process of helping and repatriating victims of human trafficking, because they cannot travel without travel documents. And it's our role to really issue those documents to them, and to do it quick and to do it in a discreet way. But also we are able to allow them contact with Polish family through Polish police.
Human rights and human dignity should always trump one's identity. The need to build a bridge of trust between diplomatic missions, faith communities, and local communities, as well as law enforcement bodies. Our shared acknowledgement of the pervasive nature of modern slavery clearly underscores to me the imperative for collaborative action at every level. Diplomacy, with its power to foster understanding and forge alliances, becomes an indispensable tool in the fight against trafficking. It is through diplomatic channels that diplomats can rally nations to enact legislation, to enhance law enforcement mechanism, and to bolster international cooperations to dismantle cross-border criminal networks. Faith is ultimately about hope and humanity. It emphasizes the importance of human dignity, justice, and compassion. And all of these are directly relevant to addressing the issue of modern slavery. And I hope we can move the discussions that we started here today beyond these walls and transform them into action. To sum up, I believe we can all be ambassadors of change, whether this is within a diplomatic mission, within a church, from within a police station, a university, or just by being a member of the local community. So let us be the ambassadors of change, advocating for the rights of the oppressed and holding accountable those who profit from human trafficking.
It's important that we make this systemic, and that's why the actors in the room today can actually be the start of a process to develop ways that we can create pathways so that the diaspora community, so that those who are working in faith groups, particularly with those nationals who come from outside the UK, and those who are in statutory agencies like the police, border force, health service, and all the non-government organisations can come together to come up with solutions so that we can start to identify more victims, give them the support they require, and actually pursue the criminals.